were still together. And he came to visit, and she broke up with him. And then they went traveling, and then she came back. And then she said, yeah, but she promised him that she wouldn't do anything with me. And so we were laying in bed together, and I was getting incredibly horny because we were cuddling, and I was feeling her out a bit, testing my boundaries, and you know how these things go. And she was saying that for her it was also sometimes hard. I didn't really feel any of that. I felt nothing of that from her side. So, it's quite frustrating to lay together in bed and spoon and have a boner all the time, and I'm sure she felt that. Why do I talk about this? Is it weird? I don't know. I'm sure we're getting somewhere here. And in the end, she left. And for me, it was kind of weird because I absolutely fell in love with her, yet I didn't really feel anything back from her. Nothing. It was more like a friendship. And I don't know whether she actually felt any of the things that she somehow said, or whether she just wanted to have someone to cuddle with. I also don't know if maybe she said to her boyfriend that she wouldn't do anything with me simply for the reason that she didn't really feel like that. Maybe she just liked me, my presence, because I am not like most guys, but also she made sure that she got one of the only guys in her bed that was in camp. And then I met another girl in the same year, and we kind of started liking each other, and she was also a bit more shy. And in the end, we went together to some friends of mine, which stayed in a nearby town. And because I knew them before we left for Christmas, because I went back to Germany and she just went for a holiday back to France, I invited her to come with me. We did engage with each other in physical activities, and it was quite nice, quite gentle. Doesn't really matter. And I went back to Germany. It didn't really mean anything to me, but having conquered her did mean something for me. And that was often with women, this feeling I want to conquer them. I want to take them off the list. Guys like to use the phrase to put the flag in. The flag is sticking, like with the moon, for example. We have the flag on the moon. And then man can say, oh, we penetrated space and reached the moon. And, now they penetrate space and reach the Mars. And you can say that's that ego quality, whatever the ego is, but I've had a fair share of saying what it is. Maybe I will stop doing that. And the next year in May, I came back to South Africa. And this girl, which I spent time with just before I left, she was still there for a couple of weeks. And she was living in that kind of fantasy that if I would come back, we would be together again. And I had a hard time telling her that I didn't want it. At some point, I said to her, hey, I actually don't want it. And there was another French girl, which I liked very much, but she was in a relationship. And for me, because she had that also playful kind of character, she liked to play with men. And I started to take it upon myself as a challenge to get her. I got quite far, but she was also committed to her boyfriend, and I still got quite far. We didn't have intercourse, but there were some touching things and, laying together and cuddling and somewhat kissing. And the thing is, well, I never got her. You can say that. So in the end, I also got a bit bored because I wasn't really interested in her. I just was interested in claiming her for myself. But then I would have had no interest in keeping her with myself. And this year, also a lot of stuff happened. I think that was 2017 then. I also met another friend who was quite skilled in the art of seducing women, and I became a bit more confident because I realized by now that I could engage with women, which I never could before. I was always so shy, so now I was coming a bit out of myself because I was suddenly in an environment where I was also one of the only young men. And yeah, women started to show an interest in me. Maybe it was because I was the only one available, or one of the only ones, and at that I wasn't really a bad catch. I was active and sporty and all that kind of stuff. And then a French girl started to show interest in me, and we had a thing going on for a couple of weeks. And when she left, another French girl came and she was kind of obsessed with me. It was kind of weird. I call her like insanely crazy because she really couldn't keep herself from fantasizing about me. And one time she just stood in my room, and she wasn't bad looking or anything. She was quite cute, but also quite crazy, like literally crazy. She didn't really know what she was doing. She was just breathing down my neck, and suddenly I was involved with her for about a week. And she was also in a relationship. And that girl before also was in a relationship. And then that French girl that was a bit crazy, she came the day that French girl before left. And then that other French girl, the crazy one, she went on a holiday with her boyfriend and the parents of the boyfriend. And while they were on holiday, her boyfriend found out that she had cheated on him again. I wasn't the first one. And that made the rest of her holiday quite uncomfortable. Me, I was in a state of, I was really in love with her. I don't even know why. I was completely in love with her. And she found that very horrible. I was like, oh, I love you, And she said, oh, that's horrible. And we didn't have any further contact. And then a lot of other things happened that, somebody said, oh, that guy has the sexiest butt I've ever seen. So I started to become more confident and more cocky, and I started to have the belief I can have any woman that I want. I was beginning to think that I'm irresistible. And then there was somebody else. Everybody thought she was completely stunning and just unapproachable. At that time, there were I think, also 3 to 4 men. And with the one girl, I got along quite well, and she was quite stunning. And I think she was quite irresistible, but also quite unapproachable. And we spent some time together, and it was nice, and yeah, we had nice conversations and stuff. But she wouldn't give me any feeling that she was interested. And then a Dutch girl arrived, and she was somewhat also a bit spiritual, like the cool type of girl, like easygoing. And I started to spend more time with her. And then one night I was down at the lodge doing my thing while everybody was sleeping. I was just smoking doobies and listening to music. So I also get it in a way, right? I mean, I'm quite a free spirit. And then suddenly that French girl was there, and we had a nice time. And over the next 3 months, we really started to like each other. And I think I can safely say with her, I had also one of the best times of my life. It was just really free and not so forceful, yet emotional things did happen. But that once more showed me, hey, I don't even have to do anything. Women just come to me, and I don't know why. And but still, in a way, I started to think, okay, I can have any woman that I like. But I also started to realize I don't want to. And I made some foolish mistakes where I just tried things with different kinds of women. Sometimes I didn't even really want to be with them, but just because I thought that I could, I also thought that I should. But the women that I really put in effort were usually the ones I could just, in general, get along with quite well. I didn't just want to have sex with any woman. It always needed to be a specific woman. How is this related to the ego? Well, we'll get there in a second. So, after that, I went at some stage, because all these things, they also kind of leave you heartbroken, right? I mean, I'm not made of stone, so yes, I could have intimate relationships with all of these women, but they also all ended. And although I did have the feeling, being more confident, having gained a lot of muscles during the time I was in South Africa, and also having realized that I can be with women if I want to be, I also realized pretty soon that it's not just about being intimate with each other, it's also about all the rest. Like, how do you see life in general, and all that kind of stuff. But I left South Africa with the sense of feeling I'm irresistible. The thing is, while I was in South Africa, money wasn't really the problem, and having my own space sometimes wasn't really the problem. There was always, somehow you would always find a space. Yeah, always. And back in South Africa, back in Germany, I then also got a bit desperate for females, right? Because now I was back in my parents' place, and that's not so attractive. And you are not surrounded by a lot of needy women that are somewhere in nature and where you're the only, basically the alpha male, at least in bush camp, right? And, well, how do you deal with that then? Well, I first started reaching out to women, and I met one and we had a quite nice relationship, and then I went couch surfing once, and I didn't really want to get attached. And I was kind of in that feeling, I meet women and I have to have sex with them. And that one couch surfing experience where I had my first and only one night stand, I said to myself, I don't want this anymore. This is not the way I want to go. And still, I had the belief I can have any woman that I want to have. And apparently I could if I wanted to, which I didn't want anymore, so I stopped. But still, I wanted to do it, because maybe it was a thing from the past, it was stuff running off, and of course also I was having my value given to myself through having intimate relations with women, because it showed me, I can conquer them. And then I had them in my collection, and then I could leave them and show that I'm powerful and I don't need them. So, what does all of this have to do with self-worth? I didn't really start loving myself more through that, but it did show me that apparently there is something in me that is not so terrible. But then also no woman ever stayed with me. So how irresistible can you really be if all these women want to be far away from you? And then I started to become more spiritual. I started to discover spirituality, and the women that I met also changed. But I also realized it's not about the sex for me anymore. I want something deeper, yet I wasn't really ready to open up. Not at all. And as of today, there are 3 important women that I met that I somehow had to let go but also in some cases reconnect with. And just today I woke up with that kind of realization. How can it be that you told yourself all this time that you are irresistible, yet no woman ever made any effort to stay with you? Talking about this creates a whole lot of confusion in myself. I don't know what this is, but in front of my inner eye, there's right now inside, I feel like broken chaos. I feel like I don't know. I don't know what this feeling is. It feels kind of weird and disgusting and slimy. And it also somehow comes from my stomach because I haven't been eating very well the last couple of days. I drank a lot of coffee and I ate a lot of sugar. And I feel like there's something inside of me that's just broken. And maybe this is something women didn't really like, so they try to get away from me because there's something broken in you. Maybe it's not very attractive. Not having money apparently is also not very attractive. Not having your own place is not very attractive. And yet I always thought to myself, why isn't there any woman that just loves me because I'm me, whether I have money or not? And of course, it also has to do with setting boundaries and all of these kinds of things. And yet I'm left with the feeling that, especially the last 3 women, I was unable to maintain a relationship with them, either because they did something that I didn't like, I did something that I didn't like, we both did things the other person didn't like, and in the end we didn't stay together. So of course it's not just that I'm not able to stay with women, but also apparently women are not able to stay with me. Do I have to take that all upon myself, the blame? I don't think so. But just the thought, I always thought I'm irresistible. And it's quite, if you have convinced yourself, probably out of frustration, that you're irresistible for a long, long time, and then suddenly you have that thought, maybe I'm not that irresistible. Maybe I'm quite easy for women to resist. But I was walking around, seeing women, and I thought, you all love me. And maybe they do, I don't know. But I realized that for myself, maybe it is in that way, that I want to, that I can have any woman if I put in the effort, because I can love every woman if I want to, also intimately. But I realized I also don't want to. Plus, if you don't have a lot of income and if you don't have your own place, it's also very hard, because women don't just want sex. Women don't just want money. Women don't just want men to be conquerors. No, I think women want passion and compassion, and women want empathy, but women also want, in a sense, security and strength and all these values that we say are not really what women want. No, women just want sex. That's what we're being told as men. Every woman wants it, you just have to go and give it to her. So then you start giving it to every woman, and then good luck with that. And I don't know if that has anything to do with the ego. It's certainly a way to cope with emotional trauma also. And it certainly did help me a lot discover my own worth. But in the end, well, ultimately, it probably will also have helped me to understand what I need to do in order to keep a woman in my life. But one thing is for sure, I'm not irresistible. I'm not irresistible. I'm quite resistible. And why is that? Because I was also quite resistant to open up, to truly open up to a woman. And the women that I met recently, it wasn't so much about the money, and it also wasn't so much about my own place. It was more about the way I communicated with them, the way I treated them, and also the way I treated myself. Of course, how I treat others is a reflection of how I treat myself. So you can say, why did I treat myself so badly, and why did I treat these women not so nice in turn? And sometimes I also wasn't treated that nicely. So what's left when suddenly you are faced with the idea, maybe I'm not irresistible? Well, it just goes back to the way it used to be, mixed with the way it was. And then you find yourself more in balance. You find yourself knowing that you can make a woman happy, but it also has to be the right woman. That to the right woman, you're going to be irresistible because you're not going to resist anymore. And how does all of this relate to the ego? Is this really the ego episode? I think it is, isn't it? So also allowing yourself to be a bit uncertain sometimes, I think probably helps in staying a bit humble. Actively suffering probably helps in staying a bit humble. And not being too hard on yourself also helps in just living a more easy and fulfilling life. And I think where I'm going with this is not so sure. I think where I'm going with this is somewhere else. And I think where I'm going with this is, let's see. I think, oh, that's actually funny. Why am I holding this thing? Why am I holding this thing? Just a second. Because I do realize I have a tripod. But the thing is, I thought I was using it for my camera, but I wasn't. See, I don't want to just talk about these things like this. So I took a stack of books, and I'm just going to go through them, and I want to just open up random passages, read them, and then talk about it in regards to the ego. But first of all, some water. Yeah, I don't know why Want some sparkling water. Okay, this is the book How We Decide by Jonah Lehrer. I actually thought it was about food because there's 3 ice creams of different tastes on top. I thought it was about how we decide in regards with food. Moral decisions are a unique kind of decision. When you're picking our products in the grocery store, searching for the best possible strawberry jam, you are trying to maximize your own enjoyment. You are the only person that matters. It is your sense of pleasure that you are trying to please. In this case, selfishness is the ideal strategy. You should listen to those twitchy cells in the orbitofrontal cortex that tell you what you really want. However, when you are making a moral decision, this egocentric strategy backfires. Moral decisions require taking other people into account. You can't act like a greedy brute or let your anger get out of control. That's a recipe for depravity and jail time. Doing the right thing means thinking about everybody else, using the emotional brain to mirror the emotions of strangers. Selfishness needs to be balanced by non-selfishness, by some selfishness, selflessness. Okay, I think that's already enough. Interesting part. So yeah, there are definitely moral consequences. There were moral consequences when I was engaging with women in South Africa, because I did it because I wanted some specific woman for myself. But because I did that, it changed the dynamics of the whole system. And it changed relationships. It changed also how other people treated me, because there was jealousy. Because I was not overly interested in one woman. Other women got jealous and started telling weird stories about me that weren't true, but just because they couldn't have me, they were kind of, jealous, which is, I think, quite weird. But also not, because if I would have been more selfless, maybe, but that's the thing, I wasn't that selfish, because there were some guys that wanted all the women to themselves. So, yes, in that one case, there was one young woman that started telling stories that weren't true about me. And later on, but in general, I was running into a lot of trouble because of that. Because suddenly I felt like, whoa, nobody likes me anymore because they think I'm like this, although I'm not. Because I was always focused just on one woman. I didn't want all of them. I just wanted one. So in a way, yes, I was selfish, but in a way also selfless, because I didn't force any woman to be with me. I just opened up to be with the woman, and the woman seemed to like it, because I have quite a giving nature. So I'm quite selfless. But I also like to choose, right? So, yeah. Actually, I'm quite safe here. Maybe I'm getting back to the idea that I'm actually irresistible, because I must be quite awesome for all these beautiful women to have wanted to be with me freely. But also, if you get to a certain stage where you grow up a bit and you seek for actual women, these women also want you to stand on your own 2 feet, and that's something I never was able to do until now. This is a book called The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. When all us left from okay. When all us left from down home and was waiting down by the depot for the truck, it was night time. June bugs was shooting everywhere. They lighted up a tree leaf, and I seen a streak of green every now and again. That was the last time I seen real June bugs. These things up here ain't June bugs. There's something else. Folks here call them fireflies. Down home they was different, but I recollect that streak of green. I recollect it well. So I think depending on how you look at something, depending where you are, so you could say depending on where you are in life, you might call things by a different name. And you might see things in a different way depending on where you are. So in that case, it was June bugs and fireflies. And maybe for some people it's something different. Yet in the end, I'm still Christopher. But I didn't always see myself as Christopher. There were times where I saw myself as Chris, and even before that as Olaf. And I think if you're really far away from yourself, from your true nature, but what does that mean? Isn't my nature that which you see in every moment? And yet it still changes. And while it's still basically always just the present moment, we also somehow change in every moment. And somehow, whatever time is, something passes and energy flows off and we change and suddenly we're different. But we also have to realize that we've changed. Because if we change but we don't allow ourselves to see the change that we went through, then we're still trapped in the past. And we cannot call ourselves by a different name or see ourselves in a different light if we still are fixed on the idea how we used to be or the decisions we used to make. And I think this is also something in connection with the ego that sometimes we're really hard on ourselves, and because we did things in the past, we think, we should never be with somebody again. Because we cannot trust ourselves to make people happy, because as soon as we get together with someone, we hurt them. But because we've hurt people already, we can then make sure that we don't hurt them again. We can start becoming more gentle and already realizing, because of my behavior, I hurt people. You can come to the conclusion, that you're quite empathic because you're feeling the pain of somebody else. And that's quite nice, right? I mean, that's basically being selfless. Because you don't just feel yourself, you also feel how other people feel. And I think that's quite a good trait. And that's why it's always good to make like a, what's the status quo? So you sit down with yourself and you reflect on all your past experiences. And you think about how were you a year ago? What are the type of decisions you made? How did you feel? What did you do? And how did you do it? How did you see yourself and how did you see other people? Did you work on yourself to become a better person, or did you actually develop bad habits? So you just need to check up on yourself once in a while to see where you're standing in life. And then based on that, you make decisions on in which direction you would like to continue. And then you basically kickstart your own change. Instead of thinking all the time, I'm a terrible person, you look at, oh, okay, how can it be that there's still people that like me? if I'm so terrible. So you start seeing yourself in a better light and granting yourself some nice perspectives of yourself. And I think that's where also the emotional healing starts, because you start accepting yourself more and allowing yourself to be the best version of yourself, which is reconnecting with your loving and kind nature. And that doesn't mean that you always have to be super, super nice to everyone. That means you can set firm boundaries also. But because you've realized, that you have something to give, you also make sure you give it to the right people, because not everybody deserves what you have to give. That sounds selfish, but it's not about being selfless or selfish. It's about being both in a balanced and healthy way that suits you the most to be the best version of yourself. And in order to be the best version of yourself, to look at where you currently stand and then where you want to go is quite important. This is the book The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. Well, maybe I just want to know the future so I can prepare myself for what's coming. If good things are coming, they will be a pleasant surprise, said the seer. If bad things are, and you know in advance, you will suffer greatly before they even occur. I want to know about the future because I'm a man, the camel driver had said to the seer, and men always live their lives based on the future. The seer was a specialist in the casting of twigs. He threw them on the ground and made interpretations based on how they fell. That day he didn't make a cast. He wrapped the twigs in a piece of cloth and put them back in his bag. I make my living forecasting the future for people, he said. I know the science of the twigs, and I know how to use them to penetrate to the place where all is written. There I can read the past, discover what has already been forgotten, and understand the omens that are here in the present. When people consult me, it's not that I'm reading the future, I am guessing at the future. The future belongs to God, and it is only He who reveals it under extraordinary circumstances. How do I guess at the future? Based on the omens of the present. The secret is here in the present. If you pay attention to the present, you can improve upon it. And if you improve on the present, what comes later will also be better. Forget about the future and live each day according to the teachings, confident that God loves His children. Each day in itself brings with it an eternity. The camel driver had asked what the circumstances were under which God would allow him to see the future. Only when He Himself reveals it, and God only rarely reveals the future. When He does so, it is for only one reason. It's a future that was written so as to be altered. God had shown the boy a part of the future. The camel driver thought, why was it that He wanted the boy to serve as His instrument? Go and speak to the tribal chieftains, said the camel driver. Tell them about the armies that are approaching. They laugh at me. They are men of the desert, and the men of the desert are used to dealing with omens. Well, then they probably already know. They're not concerned with that right now. They believe that if they have to know about something, Allah wants them to know. Someone will tell them about it. It has happened many times before, but this time the person is you. The boy thought of Fatima, and he decided he would go to see the chiefs of the tribes. So, don't know what that really says. The boy approached the guard at the front of the huge white tent at the center of the oasis. I want to see the chieftains. I've brought omens from the desert. Without responding, the guard entered the tent, where he remained for some time. When he emerged, it was with a young Arab, dressed in white and gold. The boy told the younger man what he had seen, and the man asked him to wait there. He disappeared into the tent. So, because the camel driver in that sequence there was something required of him. And because he had somebody he wanted to love, Fatima, which is his, what he thinks is his soulmate or the love of his life. And because he had somebody like this, like he had a goal, he could make better decisions. Because whenever he was faced with something, he made a decision that would bring him closer to Fatima. So I believe choosing one woman for the rest of your life means you will be able to make better decisions. And just looking for all the women and having sex with all the women and claiming all the women for yourself will leave you very unhappy, because you will be very indecisive. Because how do you ought to be? If you can have any woman, what kind of decisions should you make? Should you buy a camper van because there's a woman, that would require you to give that to her? Should you have long hair? Should you have short hair? For me, it was always, I don't really care that much how I look like. I want to look like the person that, resembles my nature. So if my nature requires me to have long hair, then I will have long hair. If my nature requires me to be bold, to reach the goals in my life, I will be bold. But ultimately, I started to look at, okay, what woman do I want in my life? Because often, yes, a lot of women liked me, but I didn't like all women. And although a lot of women liked me, not all women were really good for me. Some women were terrible for me, whereas some were quite nice. But then there were some women that were not really in my general area, like geographically, and then there were some women that were. But neither of them ever really remained in my life, whether it was because I distanced myself from them or they distanced themselves from me. And I think a lot about the ego is a lot about also finding love. Because what does the ego need the most? The ego needs love. And you can give yourself this love, but a specific type of love you cannot give yourself. And that is the kind of love you would receive from a woman. And maybe as a woman you would receive that from a man. But for me it's always easier to take the man's perspective, of course. And I think making up your mind as to what woman you want to be the mother of your children also means it's a bit selfless, right? Because then you also start thinking, okay, because I have a feeling this is my mission in life. So I have to make a decision also, okay, how do I like my life to be? How can I be the best version of myself? And what woman will bring out the best qualities in myself? And then you have to make a decision and say, this is the woman that I want. And then you do everything based on realizing the reality to be with that woman. And there's no guarantee that this woman will also choose you. But there's always hope, right? And you will not be so split anymore because you were told that, men should have as much sex as they want, with all kinds of different women. Because that just turns you into an asshole. And that just turns you into an ego-driven, selfish person. Being selfless also means restricting yourself a bit and saying, no, actually, I want to devote myself 100% to only one woman. And that means, in a way, it's selfless because you give yourself, all of yourself, to one woman. And you make sure that her needs are met. And then you hope that she will make sure that your needs are met. And in that way, you can then come together and create something beautiful out of this. Whereas if you just turn out to be, really selfish and you want all the women for yourself, well, can you give yourself 100% to all of these women? Well, if you can, good luck. I doubt it very much. Okay. This is the book Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind. Don't know if I really want to read in there. Empty maps. The modern explore and conquer mentality is nicely illustrated by the development of world maps. Many cultures drew world maps long before the modern age. Obviously, none of them really knew the whole of the world. No Afro-Asian culture knew about America, and no American culture knew about Afro-Asia. But unfamiliar areas were simply left out or filled with imaginary monsters and wonders. These maps had no empty spaces. They gave the impression of a familiarity with the entire world. During the 15th and 16th century, Europeans began to draw world maps with lots of empty spaces. Our indication of the development of the scientific mindset as well as of the European imperial drive. The empty maps were a psychological and ideological breakthrough, a clear admission that Europeans were ignorant of large parts of the world. The crucial turning point came in 1942, when Christopher Columbus sailed westward from Spain, seeking a new route to East Asia. Columbus still believed in the old complete world maps. Using them, he calculated that Japan should have been located about 7,000 kilometers west of Spain. In fact, more than 20,000 kilometers and an entire unknown continent separate East Asia from Spain. On 12th October 1492, at about 2 a.m., Columbus' expedition collided with the unknown continent. Juan Rodriguez Bermejo, watching from the mast of the ship Pinta, spotted an island in what we now call the Bahamas and shouted, "Land, land." I think one of the only things I have to say to that is, didn't somebody once say that Columbus was compensating with his small height in conquering like another continent? So maybe he felt like he needed to prove his worth with some kind of crazy deed. And I think you can do that. I don't think you really need to, but it certainly helps in discovering your own worth. What are your limits? And it also definitely shows that despite his height, Columbus was able of great deeds. And conquering or claiming a whole continent is certainly a great deed. Whereas on a moral perspective, it's quite selfish to take it away from other people, and he wasn't really aware of the consequences of his actions. So I think a great man should also be aware of his consequences and make sure that the deed he chooses, the heroic deed he chooses, is something that benefits society. And for that you have to be a well-reflected person, to be aware of your actions and the consequences to a certain extent. And then also let go and give yourself into God's hand. But you cannot give yourself into God's hand unless you have learned to trust your intuition, trust in God, and have some kind of faith. And if you are always concerned with becoming a better person in terms of what does society need to become, a better version of society to change, then you also will change into a person that, is concerned with his own, how can I be a better version of myself? And then you can start looking for the best woman that can help you accomplish your mission. And that then means you have a goal in life, you want to accomplish it, and you pick out a woman that helps you fulfill that. And if you're lucky, that woman will say at one point, okay, I want to be with you. This is the complete short stories of Ernest Hemingway. And this is also in a way selfless, because I change myself in order to contribute to the world and give myself to a woman that in a way also selfish, because I want to fulfill my own dream, right? So it's like, it's always an in-between thing between selfishness and selflessness. What would happen if they heard about it in Nairobi? I'd love my license for one thing. Other unpleasantness. What? Wilson said, taking a drink from the flask. I'd be out of business. Really? Yes, really. Well said, Macomber, and he smiled for the first time all day. Now she has something on you. You have such a pretty way of putting things, Francis, Margaret Macomber said. Wilson looked at them both. If a 4-letter man marries a 5-letter woman, he was thinking, what number of letters would their children be? What he said was, we lost the gun bearer. Did you notice it? My God, no, Macomber said. Here he comes, Wilson said. He's all right. He must have fallen off when we left the first bull. I think the only thing I want to say to that is, don't always spill out all your thoughts, because some of these thoughts might actually hurt people, and you don't have to spill your all your inner parts to anyone. Because sometimes I also realized it's quite egoistic to share all your thoughts with people. Sometimes it's quite selfish to impose all your opinions and ideas on other people. Sometimes it's better to just keep quiet. And that's a lesson I really had to learn, to remain silent and listen. And when somebody talks, I just listen to the person. But of course, it also sometimes depends on what the person is saying. And does the person also listen to me? So in these kind of terms, it's not the way to go to just always listen to people, because if people don't listen to you, then why should you listen to them? There's always a balance, and it's just about figuring out also what works for you. Like, how can you be a better person when things work out for you in the same way that they should also work out for other people, but that's for them to decide. So if you realize, for me it works if I just always listen to people, and I don't mind if they don't listen to me, well, then that's perfect for you. To me, I realized if people don't listen to me, I don't listen to them. That's just how it is. And if people don't listen to me, I also don't talk to them anymore. So they will make sure to listen to me if they want to hear what I have to say, and I have a great deal. I can say a great deal. Now, funny enough, I stumbled across this book, The Behavior Guide to African Mammals, including hoofed mammals, carnivores, and primates. I don't know if I really have to read a part of this book, but I think looking at nature and animal behavior, and I think marking them as animals is already quite discriminating. Because I think they are not below us, nor are they above us. I think they are. Like we are. And animals are closer to their nature as most humans are. And Here I'm in the realm of cats. Family traits. Carnivores resembling the domestic cat with long, fine body and long tail or shorter body and bobtail. Males somewhat larger and more muscular than females. Otherwise minimal sexual dimorphism except lion. Legs short, blah blah blah. Cats are so much alike in nearly every way except size that all but the cheetah should arguably be placed in the same genus. Okay, now it says senses, vision is highly developed, distribution, ecology. Whoa. Maybe I should just read the back. Okay. A classic in the field, the behavior guide to African mammals is as different from a conventional field guide as motion pictures are from a snapshot. Whether we are able to look at them face to face, online, or in the hundreds of